Hello. I'm going to be talking mostly about the trial over the Kenosha incident, but I've got a few things to get out of the way first. The first thing is that today is Remembrance Sunday. You might not be watching this, but as of the making of it. And that's when people in Britain go to their local memorials. Usually they lay wreaths, they have parades. It's the closest one to November the 11th that's possible. And the unfortunate thing I've heard is that Her Majesty the Queen won't be attending. I mean, she's attended every year. She's stood out in rain and gales and everything there in her black hat with a straight and perfectly composed expression on her face. But this year she's not doing it. They say it's because she has a strained back. You know, who knows? But I don't think she's well. And she wasn't well a few weeks ago as well. And that really does bother me. So there's that is also concerning me. And the other thing is that I have a terrible cold. As some of you may have realised that my voice is a couple of registers down. Now, quite frankly, I wish it were like this all the time, but unfortunately, I'm stuck with the squeaky voice I've got. I made the mistake of thinking I was better a few days ago, and I went riding out in the cold. I didn't put on a heavy jacket because I thought I'd get overheated, because it's such a lovely, crisp, clear day. And I got thoroughly chilled and set myself pack. And since I'm going to be talking about human stupidity, I have to tell you that I am including myself in this particular category right now, because that was just about the dumbest thing anyone could have done. Hang on, cough break. So, right, what have I done? I've told you about Kenosha. I've told you about human stupidity with particular reference to myself. Oh, I told you about the Queen. And I want to say my hair's a mess, and that's because my hairdresser has exactly the same cold, and she couldn't come last week. So, yeah, I know I'm a bit of a mess. Right, so you know the reason for whatever is going on right now. And if I seem to be losing it, that's because my brain has turned to mush. This cold has really made a mess of me. But I have been occasionally watching the trial. And the first thing I have to say is I have a lot of respect for the judge. And the second thing is I feel like throwing tomatoes at the prosecutor. And the third thing is that Kyle Rittenhouse seems like a good kid who got way in over his head. So that's my general impression. Oh, and the fourth thing is what's happened to the Young Turks, because that's particularly amusing. You see, they were all for, strangle, pillory, crucify, this white supremacist, and they were throwing, and then suddenly, there was Anna Kasparian saying stuff like, we got the wrong information, and he isn't really the first, the one who started the fight and all the rest of it. And I thought, I wonder whether after a while their lawyers started to whisper in their ears, how much again was it that Nick Sandmann got from the Washington Post for their libel of him as a white supremacist? I'm quite sure that's had a tremendous effect on their ability to report the news. Okay, so there's that too. And the other thing that interests me is the number of people wearing suits. There was one who looked like a sort of a biker, like a Hell's Angel. I don't know whether he was, but he posted something about he says now, putting words into the mouth of his friends. The only thing I did wrong was I didn't finish the kid off or something like that. And now he says, yeah, I was angry and I just spouted off, and he didn't say any such thing. But even he was wearing a suit. Everybody's wearing suits. In fact, the only person who didn't wear a suit was the car dealership fellow, Kindy, the son of the owner, and he was just wearing a fleece jacket or something, which struck me as interesting because he was the only one not on trial for his morals, so to speak, and he was the only one who wasn't trying to project the image of a respectable citizen, because he was a respectable citizen and there was no question about it. Now, as for the prosecutor, you know, this whole setup reminds me of a bad Perry Mason script. I mean, as some of you know, I have written for television and radio, and there are some tropes that you come up with, you know, and this is sort of like an encapsulation of all of those tropes. There's the crusty old judge, you know, good at heart and forthright in his speech. And then there's the innocent young kid who cries on the witness stand. I mean, I think he shouldn't have been there with that gun myself. That's my, you know, I'm coming from England where people can't just walk around heaving guns about. He shouldn't have been there. That's my opinion. But that's not the illegal bit. The worst they could have got at him for was, you know, going across the state line with a gun, which how would you put it? It's excusable in many ways, considering that he was like 10 minutes away from, you know, I mean, that's where the state line was. And he probably wasn't even really thinking about state lines at that point. That's a sort of side issue. That is the very worst that they should have been trying to get him at, because he was in definite danger of his life. And they decided to take this kid and hang him out to dry for preserving his own life. And I just don't understand why they would have done this. You know, I'm trying to work it through now as I'm talking to you. And so this is what I mean. My brain has turned to mush with this cold. Maybe some of you can help me out with this. And then, okay, so there's the crusty old judge. Sorry, cough break. There's the crusty old judge. And then there's the cocky prosecutor. I mean, he's even worse than the one you know, that guy in Perry Mason who always lost the cases. I don't know why he even bothered, because he always lost. But, you know, he asks questions. I mean, there's one, comedy gold, could have come out of one of the what do you call it? The Naked Gun shows. I mean, we all know about it. It's a famous little clip now where the prosecutor says to the journalist, was that McGuinness? I'm sorry, I had some notes, but I can't find them now. Please forgive me. I really am not feeling that well, but I just have to ask you all. So the prosecutor, you know, I remember seeing the show where a young lawyer asks a witness a question, and then the witness just flattens him with the answer. And the next scene, you see the young lawyer's boss shouting at him, never ask a question you don't know the answer to. I don't remember what show it was, but it might have been several. And that prosecutor, who is obviously an experienced lawyer, does exactly that. He says, I mean, in the face of the video, which a child could interpret reasonably, I mean, there's absolutely no question about it, he asked the journalist, so you don't know what was going on in the mind of Rosenbaum? And the journalist just said, well, you mean apart from the fact that he said, fuck you, and grabbed at the gun? I mean, that's where the scene should have stopped. As a matter of fact, the prosecutor recovered quite well. He then came back with, well, let's talk about that, which was a very good way of trying to deflect it, but not a good way of spoiling the effect, because everybody has cropped that video right there at the end of what McGuinness said. I mean, he just keeps falling into elephant traps, and I do not understand why he should be doing that. And then there's the quite sad evidence of, you might be able to hear the dog there. There's this quite sad evidence of Kyle Rittenhouse himself, who people are still trying to push as some sort of white supremacist. In fact, a lot of people are under the impression that the people he shot were black. That seems to be a common misconception. So again, the whole situation is completely weird. It's completely weird. But even more than that, what I can't understand is why the prosecution was brought in the first place. It's a clear case of self-defense. I don't know that much about the American system, but I'm sure it must be somewhat similar, because you have things like coroners in America. Are you aware that the word coroner means the person who acts for the crown? I said that to an American friend once. He was quite shocked. The coroner is the crowner, the person who acts in place of the king or the monarch in deciding where a court case goes. And when a case in Britain goes to the coroner's court, it is either to the coroner's court and then to the magistrate's court. It will stop there if there is no case to answer. So I'm quite sure there must have been somewhere between the arrest and this whole circus, this three-ring circus that's going on. I'm quite sure there must have been something that somebody could have said, look, we've seen the videos. It's obvious this was self-defense. Right. Slap him with a fine for taking a gun across state lines or something and leave it at that. I don't know why they're doing this. It doesn't make any sense. If Rittenhouse gets convicted, it's going to cause a terrible rupture in the American legal system. If Rittenhouse gets let off with nothing, then it's going to cause more riots, because there are a lot of stupid people around. And it's just causing trouble. The only thing that the only bright spot is that it is pure comedy gold. And it is an instance of farce, of tragedy turning into farce. You know that there's an expression, farce is tragedy with its trousers down. And that's exactly what this is. Why not treat yourself or a favoured relative or friend to these magnificent examples of merch? The mugs and t-shirts come in the Graniopteryx design or Grambo with a firearm or the more deadly knitting needles. Go to www.graniopteryx.com and whatever platform you're watching this on, please click like, subscribe and share.